Blankets. Do you have a favorite blanket? One with the alphabet on it, or one where bunnies hop around? Blankets have a way of making you feel safe, like you're being hugged all the time. And you can feel it the minute you first start getting into bed. You pull your blankets back into a triangle, and then you slip your legs into them and then slide all the way down. I like blankets when they're not under your shoulder, where they could slip down, and not over your nose, where it could get too stuffy, but just under your chin, tucked all around you. That's when I think blankets are the best. Diamonds and Toads. Once upon a time there was a woman who had 2 daughters. The elder daughter was very much like her mother in face and manner. They were both so disagreeable and so proud that there was no living with them. The younger daughter was like her father, for she was good and sweet-tempered and very beautiful. As people naturally love their own likeness, the mother was very fond of her elder daughter, and at the same time had a great dislike for the younger. She made her eat in the kitchen and work all the time. Among other things, this poor child was obliged to go twice a day to draw a pitcher full of water from the spring in the woods, 2 miles from the house. One day, when she reached the spring, a poor woman came to her and begged for a drink. "Oh, yes, with all my heart, ma'am," said the pretty little girl, and she took some clear, cool water from the spring and held up the pitcher so that the woman might drink easily. When she had finished, the woman said, "You are so very pretty, my dear, so good and so kind, that I cannot help giving you a gift." Now this was a fairy who had taken the form of a poor country woman to see how this pretty girl would treat her. "I will give you for a gift," continued the fairy, "that at every word you speak, either a flower or a jewel shall come out of your mouth." When the girl reached home, her mother scolded her for staying so long at the spring. "I beg your pardon, Mamma," said the poor girl, "for not making more haste." And as she spoke, there came out of her mouth 2 roses, 2 pearls, and 2 large diamonds. "What is it I see there?" said the mother, very much surprised. "I think I see pearls and diamonds coming out of the girl's mouth. How does this happen, my child?" This was the first time she had ever called her "my child" or spoken kindly to her. The poor child told her mother all that had happened at the spring, and of the old woman's promise. All the time jewels and flowers fell from her lips. "This is delightful," cried the mother. "I must send my dearest child to the spring. Come, Fanny, see what comes out of your sister's mouth when she speaks. Would you not be glad, my dear, to have the same gift given to you? All you will have to do is take the pitcher to the spring in the wood. When a poor woman asks you for a drink, give it to her." "It would be a fine thing for me to do," said the selfish girl. "I will not go to draw water. The child can give me her jewels. She does not need them." "Yes, you shall," said the mother, "and you shall go this minute." At last the elder daughter went, grumbling and scolding all the way, and taking with her the best silver pitcher in the house. She had no sooner reached the spring than she saw a beautiful lady coming out of the wood, who came up to her and asked her for a drink. This was, you must know, the same fairy who had met her sister, but who had now taken on the form of a princess. "I did not come out here to serve you with water," said the proud, selfish maid. "Do you think I brought this silver pitcher so far just to give you a drink? You can draw water from the spring as well as I." "You're not very polite," said the fairy. "Since you are so rude and so unkind, I will give for you a gift that at every word you speak, toads and serpents shall come out of your mouth." As soon as the mother saw her daughter coming, she cried out, "Well, my dear child, did you see the good fairy?" "Yes, mother," answered the proud girl, and as she spoke, 2 serpents and 2 toads fell from her mouth. "What is this I see?" cried the mother. "What have you done?" The girl tried to answer, but at every word toads and serpents came from her lips. And so it was forever after. Jewels and flowers fell from the lips of the younger daughter, who was so good and kind, but the elder daughter could not speak without a shower of serpents and toads. Epaminondas and his auntie. Epaminondas used to go see his auntie most every day, and she nearly always gave him something to take home to his mammy. One day she gave him a big piece of cake. Nice, yellow, rich golden cake. Epaminondas took it in his fist, and he held it all crunched up tight like this, and came along home. By the time he got home, there wasn't anything left but a fistful of crumbs. His mammy said, "What you got there, Epaminondas?" "Cake, mammy," said Epaminondas. "Cake?" said his mammy. "Epaminondas, you ain't got the sense you was born with. That's no way to carry cake. The way to carry cake is to wrap it up nice in some leaves and put it in your hat and put the hat on your head and come along home. You hear me, Epaminondas?" "Yes, mammy," said Epaminondas. Next day Epaminondas went to see his auntie, and she gave him a pound of butter for his mammy. Fine, fresh, sweet butter. Epaminondas wrapped it up in leaves and put it in his hat, and put his hat on his head, and he came along home. It was a very hot day. Pretty soon the butter began to melt, and it melted and melted, and as it melted it ran down Epaminondas' forehead, and it ran all over his face, and in his ears, and down his neck. When he got home, all the butter Epaminondas had was on him. His mammy looked at him, and then she said, "Law sakes, Epaminondas, what you got in your hat?" "Butter, mammy," said Epaminondas. "Auntie gave it to me." "Butter," said his mammy. "Epaminondas, you ain't got the sense you was born with. Don't you know that's no way to carry butter? The way to carry butter is to wrap it up in some leaves and take it down to the brook and cool it in the water, and cool it in the water, and cool it in the water, and then take it on your hands careful and bring it along home." "Yes, mammy," said Epaminondas. By and by another day Epaminondas went to see his auntie again, and this time she gave him a new little puppy dog to take home. Epaminondas put it in some leaves and took it down to the brook, and there he cooled it in the water, and cooled it in the water, and cooled it in the water. Then he took it in his hands and he came along home. When he got home, the puppy dog was dead. His mammy looked at it, and she said, "Law sakes, Epaminondas, what you got there?" "A puppy dog, mammy," said Epaminondas. "A puppy dog," said his mammy. "My gracious sakes alive, Epaminondas, you ain't got the sense you was born with. That ain't the way to carry a puppy dog. The way to carry a puppy dog is to take a long piece of string and tie one end around the puppy dog's neck and put the puppy dog on the ground, and take a hold of the other end of the string and come along home, like this." "All right, mammy," said Epaminondas. Next day Epaminondas went to see his auntie again, and when he came to go home she gave him a loaf of bread to carry to his mammy, a brown, fresh, crusty loaf of bread. So Epaminondas tied a string around the end of the loaf and took hold of the end of the string and came along home like this. When he got home
His mammy looked at the thing on the end of the string, and she said, "My laws a-massy, Epaminondas, what you got on the end of that string?" "Bread, mammy," said Epaminondas. "Auntie gave it to me." "Bread," said his mammy. "Oh, Epaminondas, Epaminondas, you ain't got the sense you was born with. You never did have the sense you were born with. You never will have the sense you were born with. Now, I ain't going to tell you any more ways to bring home truck. And don't you go see your auntie neither. I'll go see her my own self. But I'll just tell you one thing, Epaminondas. You see these here 6 mince pies I done make? You see how I done set them on the doorstep to cool? Well, now, you hear me, Epaminondas. You be careful how you step on those pies." "Yes, mammy," said Epaminondas. Then Epaminondas's mammy put on her bonnet and her shawl and took a basket in her hand and went away to see auntie. The 6 mince pies sat cooling in a row on the doorstep. And then, Epaminondas was careful how he stepped on those pies. He stepped right in the middle of every one.
The 5 Chinese Brothers. Once upon a time there were 5 Chinese brothers, and they all looked exactly alike. They lived with their mother in a little house not far from the sea. The first Chinese brother could swallow the sea. The second Chinese brother had an iron neck. The third Chinese brother could stretch and stretch and stretch his legs. The fourth Chinese brother could not be burned. The fifth Chinese brother could hold his breath indefinitely. Every morning the first Chinese brother would go fishing, and whatever the weather, he would come back to the village with beautiful and rare fish which he had caught, and could sell at the market for a very good price. One day, as he was leaving the marketplace, a little boy stopped him and asked could he go fishing with him. "No, it could not be done," said the first Chinese brother. But the little boy begged, and finally the first Chinese brother consented. "Under one condition," he said, "and that is that you shall obey me promptly." "Yes, yes," the little boy promised. Early next morning the first Chinese brother and the little boy went down to the beach. "Remember," said the first Chinese brother, "you must obey me promptly. When I make a sign for you to come back, you must come back at once." "Yes, yes," the little boy promised. Then the first Chinese brother swallowed the sea, and all the fish were left high and dry at the bottom of the sea, and all the treasures of the sea lay uncovered. The little boy was delighted. He ran here and there, stuffing his pockets with strange pebbles, extraordinary shells, and fantastic algae. Near the shore, the first Chinese brother gathered some fish, while he kept holding the sea in his mouth. Presently he grew tired. It is very hard to hold the whole sea. So he made a sign with his hand for the little boy to come back. The little boy saw him, but paid no attention. The first Chinese brother made great movements with his arms, and that meant "come back." But did the little boy care? Not a bit, and he ran further away. Then the first Chinese brother felt the sea swelling inside him, and he made desperate gestures to call the little boy back. But the little boy made faces at him and fled as fast as he could. The first Chinese brother held the sea until he thought he was going to burst. All of a sudden, the sea forced its way out of his mouth and went back to its bed, and the little boy disappeared. When the first Chinese brother returned to the village alone, he was arrested, put in prison, tried, and condemned to have his head cut off. On the morning of the execution, he said to the judge, "Your Honor, will you allow me to go and bid my mother goodbye?" "It is only fair," said the judge. So the first Chinese brother went home, and the second Chinese brother came back in his place. All of the people were assembled on the village square to witness the execution. The executioner took his sword and struck a mighty blow. But the second Chinese brother got up and smiled. He was the one with the iron neck, and they simply could not cut his head off. Everybody was angry, and they decided that he should be drowned. On the morning of the execution, the second Chinese brother said to the judge, "Your Honor, will you allow me to go and bid my mother goodbye?" "It is only fair," said the judge. So the second Chinese brother went home, and the third Chinese brother came back in his place. He was pushed on a boat which made for the open sea. When they were far out at sea, the third Chinese brother was thrown overboard. But he began to stretch and stretch and stretch his legs way down to the bottom of the sea, and all the time his smiling face was bobbing up and down on the crest of the waves. He simply could not be drowned. Everybody was angry, and they all decided that he should be burned. On the morning of the execution, the third Chinese brother said to the judge, "Your Honor, will you allow me to go and bid my mother goodbye?" "It is only fair," said the judge. So the third Chinese brother went home, and the fourth Chinese brother came back in his place. He was tied up to a stake, fire was set to it, and all the people stood around watching it. In the midst of the flames they could hear him say, "Ooh, this is quite pleasant." "Bring some more wood," the people cried. The fire roared higher. "Now it's quite comfortable," said the fourth Chinese brother, for he was the one that could not be burned. Everybody was getting more and more angry every minute, and they all decided to smother him. On the morning of the execution, the fourth Chinese brother said to the judge, "Your Honor, will you allow me to go and bid my mother goodbye?" "It is only fair," said the judge. So the fourth Chinese brother went home, and the fifth Chinese brother came back in his place. A large brick oven had been built on the village square, and it had been all stuffed with whipped cream. The fifth Chinese brother was shoveled into the oven, right in the middle of the cream. The door was shut tight, and everybody sat around and waited. They were not going to be tricked again, so they stayed there all night, and even a little after dawn, just to make sure. Then they opened the door and pulled him out. And he shook himself and said, "My, that was a good sleep." Everybody stared, open-mouthed and round-eyed. But the judge stepped forth and said, "We have tried to get rid of you in every possible way, and somehow it cannot be done. It must be that you are innocent." "Yes, yes," shouted all the people. So they let him go, and he went home. And the 5 Chinese brothers and their mother all lived together happily for many years.
The Little Red Hen. One day the little red hen was scratching in the farmyard when she found a grain of wheat. "Who will plant the wheat?" she said. "Not I," said the duck. "Not I," said the cat. "Not I," said the dog. "Very well, then," said the little red hen, "I will." So she planted the grain of wheat. After some time the wheat grew tall and ripe. "Who will cut the wheat?" asked the little red hen.
I won't, said the duck. I won't, said the cat. I won't, said the dog.
Very well, then, I will, said the little red hen. So she cut the wheat. Now, she said, who will thresh the wheat?
Not I, said the duck. Not I, said the cat. Not I, said the dog.
Very well, then, I will, said the little red hen. So she threshed the wheat. When the wheat was threshed, she said, who will take the wheat to the mill to have it ground into flour?
Not I, said the duck. Not I, said the dog. Not I, said the cat.
Very well, then, I will, said the little red hen. So she took the wheat to the mill. When the wheat was ground into flour, she said, who will make this flour into bread?
Not I, said the duck. Not I, said the cat. Not I, said the dog.
Very well, then, I will, said the little red hen. And she baked a lovely loaf of bread. Then she said, who will eat the bread? Oh, I will, said the duck. Oh, I will, said the cat. Oh, I will, said the dog. Oh, no, you won't, said the little red hen. I will. And she called all of her chicks and shared the bread with them.
And the end. The end.
The Three Billy Goats Gruff. Once upon a time there were 3 billy goats who wanted to go up the hillside to make themselves fat. And the name of all 3 was Gruff. On the way up they had to cross a bridge over a stream, and under this bridge lived a great ugly troll, with eyes as big as saucers and a nose as long as a poker. The first to cross the bridge was the youngest billy goat Gruff. Trip, trap, went his hoofs on the bridge. Who is that trip-trapping over my bridge? Roared the troll. Oh, it is only I, the tiniest billy goat Gruff. I am going up the hillside to make myself fat, said the billy goat Gruff in a very small voice. Well, I'm coming to gobble you up, said the troll. Oh, no, please do not take me. I'm too little, that I am, said the billy goat. Wait a bit till the second billy goat Gruff comes. He's much bigger. Very well. Be off with you, said the troll. A little while later, the second billy goat Gruff came across the bridge. Trip, trap, went his hoofs on the bridge. Who is that trip-trapping over my bridge? Roared the troll. Oh, it's the second billy goat Gruff. I'm going up to make myself fat, said the billy goat in a strong voice. Well, I'm coming to gobble you up, said the troll. Oh, no, don't take me. Wait a bit till the big billy goat Gruff comes. He's much bigger. Very well. Be off with you, said the troll. Just then, along came the big billy goat Gruff. Trip, trap, went his hoofs on the bridge. The big billy goat Gruff was so heavy the bridge creaked and groaned under him. Who is that trip-trapping over my bridge? Roared the troll. It is I, the big billy goat Gruff, said the billy goat, who had a very loud voice of his own. Well, I'm coming to gobble you up, roared the troll. Then the big billy goat Gruff said, Well, come along, I've got 2 spears, and I'll poke your eyeballs out at your ears. I've got besides 2 curling stones, and I'll crush you to bits, body and bones. That was what the big billy goat Gruff said, And so he rushed at the troll, and he poked his eyes out with his horns, and he crushed him to bits, body and bones. Then he tossed him into the stream. After that, he went up to the hillside. There, the 3 billy goats Gruff got so fat they were hardly able to walk home again. And if they haven't gotten thinner, why, they're still fat. And so, snip, snap, snout, this tale's told out.
The Shepherd Boy and the Wolf. There was once a young shepherd boy who watched over his sheep every day. While the sheep ate grass, he passed the time by seeing how far he could throw a rock, or by looking at the clouds to see how many animal shapes he could find. He liked his job well enough, but he longed for a little excitement. So one day he decided to play a trick on the people of the village. "Wolf! Wolf!" he shouted as loud as he could. Hearing the shepherd's boy's cry, the people in the village picked up their pitchforks and club and ran to help the boy save his sheep. When they arrived, they saw no wolf. They saw only the shepherd boy, doubled up with laughter. "I fooled you! I fooled you!" he said. The people thought this was a very bad joke indeed. They warned the boy not to call again unless he really saw a wolf. The next week the boy again played his trick on the villagers. "Wolf! Wolf!" he cried out. Once again the people ran to his aid, and once again they found no wolf, only the boy laughing at them. The next day a wolf really did come down from the hills to help himself to a few fat sheep. "Wolf! Wolf!" yelled the young shepherd boy with all the power of his lungs. The people of the village heard his shouts for help and smiled. "He's trying to play a trick on us again," they said, "but this time we won't be fooled." Finally, the boy stopped shouting. He knew the villagers didn't believe him. He knew they wouldn't come. All he could do was stand back and watch the wolf kill his sheep.
The end.
The Magic Thread. Once there was a widow who had a son called Peter. He was a strong, able boy, but he did not enjoy going to school, and he was forever daydreaming. "Peter, what are you dreaming about this time?" his teacher would say to him. "I'm thinking about what I'll be when I grow up," Peter replied. "Be patient. There's plenty of time for that. Being grown up isn't all fun, you know," his teacher said. But Peter found it hard to enjoy whatever he was doing at the moment, and was always hankering after the next thing. In winter he longed for it to be summer again, and in summer he looked forward to skating, sledding, and warm fires of winter. At school he would long for the day to be over so that he could go home, and on Sunday nights he would sigh, "If only the holidays would come." What he enjoyed most was playing with his friend Lisa. She was as good a company as any boy, no matter how impatient Peter was. She never took offense. "When I grow up, I shall marry Lisa," Peter said to himself. Often he wandered through the forest, dreaming of the future. Sometimes he lay down on the soft forest floor in the warm sun, his hands behind his head, staring up at the sky through the distant treetops. One hot afternoon he began to grow sleepy. He heard someone calling his name. He opened his eyes and sat up, and standing before him was an old woman. In her hand she held a silver ball, from which dangled a silken golden thread. "See what I've got here, Peter?" she said, offering the ball to him. "What is it?" he asked curiously, touching the fine golden thread. "This is your life thread," the old woman replied. "Do not touch it, and time will pass normally. But if you wish time to pass more quickly, you have only to pull the thread a little way, and an hour will pass like a second. But I warn you, Once the thread has been pulled out, it cannot be pushed back in again. It will disappear like a puff of smoke. The ball is for you. But if you accept my gift, you must tell no one, or on that very day you shall die. Now say, do you want it? Peter seized the gift from her joyfully. It was just what he wanted. He examined the silver ball. It was light and solid, made of a single piece. The only flaw in it was the tiny hole from which the bright thread hung. He put the ball in his pocket and ran home. There, making sure his mother was out, he examined it again. The thread seemed to be creeping very slowly out of the ball, so slowly that it was scarcely noticeable to the naked eye. He longed to give it a quick tug, but dared not to do so. Not yet. The following day at school, Peter sat daydreaming about what he could do with the magic thread. The teacher scolded him for not concentrating on his work. If only, he thought, it were time to go home. Then he felt the silver ball in his pocket. If he pulled out just a tiny bit of thread, the day would be over. Very carefully, he took hold of it and tugged. Suddenly, the teacher was telling everybody to pack up their books and to leave the classroom in an orderly fashion. Peter was overjoyed. He ran all the way home. How easy life would be now. All of his troubles were over. From that day forth, he began to pull the thread just a little every day. One day, however, it occurred to him that it was stupid to pull the thread just a little each day. If he gave it a harder tug, school would be over altogether. Then he could start learning a trade and marry Lisa. So that night he gave the thread a hard tug, and in the morning he awoke to find himself apprenticed to a carpenter in town. He loved his new life, clambering about on roofs and scaffolding, lifting and hammering great beams into place that still smelled of the forest. But sometimes, when payday seemed too far off, he gave the thread a little tug, and suddenly the week was drawing to a close, and it was Friday night, and he had money in his pocket. Lisa had also come to town and was living with her aunt, who taught her housekeeping. Peter began to grow impatient for the day when they would be married. It was hard to live so near and yet so far from her. He asked her when they could be married. "In another year," she said, "then I will have learned how to be a capable wife." Peter fingered the silver ball in his pocket. "Well, the time will pass quickly enough," he said knowingly. That night Peter could not sleep. He tossed and turned restlessly. He took the magic ball from under his pillow. For a moment he hesitated. Then his impatience got the better of him, and he tugged at the golden thread. In the morning he awoke to find the year was over, and Lisa had at last agreed to marry him. Now Peter felt truly happy. But before their wedding could take place, Peter received an official-looking letter. He opened it in trepidation and read that he was expected to report to the army barracks the following week for 2 years' military service. He showed the letter to Lisa in despair. "Well," she said, "there's nothing for it. We'll just have to wait. But the time will pass quickly, you'll see. There are so many things to do in preparation for our life together." Peter smiled bravely, knowing that 2 years would seem like a lifetime to him. Once Peter had settled into life at the barracks, however, he began to feel that it wasn't so bad after all. He quite enjoyed being with all the other young men, and their duties were not very arduous at first. He remembered the old woman's warning to use the thread wisely, and for a while he refrained from pulling it. But in time he grew restless again. Army life bored him with its routine duties and harsh discipline. He began pulling the thread to make the week go faster so that it would be Sunday again, or to speed up the time until he was due for leave. And so the 2 years passed almost as if they had been a dream. Back home, Peter determined not to pull the thread again until it was absolutely necessary. After all, this was the best time of his life, as everyone told him. He did not want it to be over too quickly. He did, however, give the thread 1 or 2 very small tugs just to speed along the day of his marriage. He longed to tell Lisa of his secret, but he knew if he did, that he would die. On the day of his wedding, everyone, including Peter, was happy. He could hardly wait to show Lisa the house that he had built for her. At the wedding feast, he glanced over at his mother. He noticed for the first time how gray her hair had grown recently. She seemed to be aging so quickly. Peter felt a pang of guilt that he had pulled the thread so often. Henceforward, he would be much more sparing with it and only use it when it was strictly necessary. A few months later, Lisa announced that she was going to have a child. Peter was overjoyed and could hardly wait. When the child was born, he felt that he could never want for anything again. But whenever the child was ill or cried through the sleepless night, he gave the thread a little tug just so that the baby might be well and happy again. Times were hard, business was bad, and a government had come to power that squeezed the people dry with taxes and would tolerate no opposition. Anyone who became known as a troublemaker was thrown into prison without a trial, and rumor was enough to condemn a man. Peter had always been known as one who spoke his mind, and very soon he was arrested and cast into jail. Luckily, he had his magic ball with him, and he tugged very hard at the thread. The prison walls dissolved before him, and his enemies were scattered in the huge explosion that burst forth like thunder. It was the war that had been threatening, but it was over as quickly as a summer storm, leaving behind it an exhausted peace. Peter found himself back home with his family, but now he was a middle-aged man. For a time things went well, and Peter lived in relative contentment. One day he looked at his magic ball and saw to his surprise that the thread had turned from gold to silver. He looked in the mirror. His hair was starting to turn gray. His face was lined where before there had not been a wrinkle to be seen. He suddenly felt afraid and determined to use the thread even more carefully than before. Lisa bore him more children, and he seemed happy as the head of his growing household. His stately manner often made people think of him as some sort of benevolent ruler. He had an air of authority, as if he held the fate of others in his hands. He kept his magic ball in a well-hidden place, safe from the curious eyes of his children, knowing that if anyone were to discover it, it would be fatal. As the number of his children grew, so his house became more overcrowded. He would have to extend it, but for that he needed money. He had other worries, too. His mother was looking older and more tired every day. It was of no use for him to pull the magic thread, because that would only hasten her approaching death. All too soon she died. And as Peter stood by her graveside, he wondered how it was that life passed so quickly, even without pulling the magic thread. One night as he lay in bed, kept awake by his worries, he thought how much easier life would be if all of his children were grown up and launched upon their careers in life. He gave the thread a mighty tug, and the following day he awoke to find that his children had all left home for jobs in different parts of the country, and that he and his wife were alone. His hair was almost white now, and often his back and limbs ached as he climbed the ladder or lifted a heavy beam into place. Lisa, too, was getting old, and she was often ill. He couldn't bear to see her suffer, so that more and more he resorted to pulling the magic thread. But as soon as one trouble was solved, another seemed to grow in its place. Perhaps life would be easier if he retired, Peter thought. Then he would no longer have to clamber about on drafty, half-completed buildings, and he could look after Lisa when she was ill. The trouble was that he didn't have enough money to live on. He picked up his magic ball and looked at it. To his dismay, he saw that the thread was no longer silver, but gray and lusterless. He decided to go for a walk in the forest to think things over. It was a long time since he had been in that part of the forest. The small saplings had all grown into tall fir trees, and it was hard to find the path that he had once known. Eventually he came to a bench in a clearing. He sat down to rest and fell into a light doze. He was woken by someone calling his name. "Peter! Peter!" He looked up and saw the old woman that he had met so many years ago when she had given him the magic silver ball with its golden thread. She looked just as she had on that day, and not a day older. She smiled at him. "So, Peter, have you had a good life?" she asked. "I'm not sure," Peter said. "Your magic ball is a wonderful thing. I have never had to suffer or wait for anything in my life. And yet, it has all passed so quickly. I feel that I have had no time to take in what has happened to me, neither the good things nor the bad. Now there is so little time left. I dare not pull the thread again, for it will only bring me to my death. I do not think your gift has brought me luck." "How ungrateful you are," the old woman said. "In what way would you have wished things to be different?" "Perhaps if you had given me a different ball, one where I could have pushed the thread back in as well as pulling it out. Then I could have relived the things that went badly." The old woman laughed. "You ask a great deal. Do you think that God allows us to live our lives twice over? But I can grant you one final wish, you foolish, demanding man." "What is that?" Peter asked. "Choose," the old woman said. Peter thought hard. At length he said, "I should like to live my life again, as if for the first time, but without your magic ball. Then I will experience the bad things as well as the good without cutting them short, and at least my life will not pass as swiftly and meaninglessly as a daydream." "So be it," said the old woman. "Give me back my ball." She stretched out her hand, and Peter placed the silver ball in it. Then he sat back and closed his eyes with exhaustion. When he awoke, he was in his own bed. His youthful mother was bending over him, shaking him gently. "Wake up, Peter! You'll be late for school. You were sleeping like the dead." He looked up at her in surprise and relief. "I've had a terrible dream, Mother. I dreamed that I was old and sick, and that my life had passed like the blinking of an eye with nothing to show for it, not even any memories." His mother laughed and shook her head. "Well, that will never happen," she said. "Memories are the one thing we all have, even when we're old. Now hurry and get dressed. Lisa is waiting for you, and you'll be late for school." As Peter walked to school with Lisa, he noticed what a bright summer morning it was. The kind of morning when it felt good to be alive. Soon he would see his friends and classmates, and even the prospect of lessons didn't seem so bad. In fact, he could hardly wait.
3 Bears. Once upon a time there were 3 bears who lived in a little house in the woods. There was a great big father bear with a great big voice, and a middle-sized mother bear with a middle-sized voice, and a wee little baby bear with a wee little voice. One morning the 3 bears had porridge for breakfast. The mother bear said, "This porridge is too hot to eat. Let's go for a walk until it cools." So the 3 bears went for a walk in the woods. While they were gone, along came a little girl named
Goldilocks.
Seeing the house, she wondered who lived there, so she knocked at the door. No one answered, so she knocked again. Still no one answered, so Goldilocks opened the door and walked in. There before her in the little room she saw a table set for 3. There was a great big bowl of porridge, a middle-sized bowl of porridge, and a little wee bowl of porridge. She tasted the great big bowl of porridge. "Oh, this is too
hot,"
she said. Then she tasted the middle bowl of porridge, and she said, "Oh, this is
too cold."
Then she tasted the little wee bowl of porridge. "Oh,
it's just right," and she ate it all.
She went into another room. There she saw 3 chairs. There was a great big chair, a middle-sized chair, and a little wee chair. Goldilocks sat in the great big chair. "Oh, this chair is
too hard,"
she said. Then she sat down in the middle-sized chair, and she said,
"It's too soft."
Then she sat in the little wee chair. "Oh,
this is just right," and she broke it in pieces.
Then she went into another room. There she saw 3 beds. There was a great big bed, a middle-sized bed, and a little wee bed. Goldilocks lay down on the great big bed and said,
"This one's too hard,"
she said. Then she tried the middle-sized bed.
"It's too soft."
Then she tried the little wee bed.
And it's just right, and she lay down and slept all the way.
By this time, the 3 bears thought their porridge would be cool enough to eat, so they returned from their walk in the woods. When the great big father bear saw the spoon in his porridge bowl, he said in his great big voice, "Someone has been eating my porridge." When the middle-sized mother bear saw a spoon in her porridge, she said in her middle-sized voice, "Someone's been eating my porridge." And the little wee bear, seeing a spoon in his porridge, said in his wee little voice,
"Someone's been eating my porridge. Eat it all up."
Then the 3 bears went into the next room. When the great big father bear saw that the cushion on his chair was out of place, he said in his great big voice, "Someone has been sitting in my chair." When the middle-sized mother bear saw that the cushion on her chair was pushed in, she said in her middle-sized voice, "Someone has been sitting in my chair." And the little wee baby bear took one look at his chair and cried in a wee little voice,
"Her cushion was pushed in too.
Someone's been sitting in my chair."
Looking at all in pieces.
Then the 3 bears went into their bedroom. As soon as the great big father bear saw the wrinkled blankets on his bed, he said in his great big voice, "Someone's been lying on my bed." When the middle-sized mother bear saw that the spread on her bed was pulled back, she said in her middle-sized voice, "Someone has been lying on my bed." And when the little wee baby bear looked at his bed, he cried in his wee little voice,
"Someone's been laying on my bed. There she is."
Now Goldilocks was sleeping so soundly, the big voice of the father bear was only like the roaring of the wind, and the middle-sized voice of the middle-sized mother bear was like someone speaking in a dream. But the little wee voice of the little wee baby bear was so sharp and shrill that it woke her up at once. When she saw the three bears looking at her, she leaped from her bed, ran across the room, and jumped out of the low window. Then she ran through the woods as fast as her legs could carry her. Whatever happened to her, I do not know, but the three bears never saw her again.
The end. Done.
Rain, rain, go away. Come again another day. This is the house that Jack built. This is the malt that lay in the house that Jack built. This is the rat that ate the malt that lay in the house that Jack built. This is the cat that killed the rat that ate the malt that lay in the house that Jack built. This is the dog that worried the cat that killed the rat that ate the malt that lay in the house that Jack built. This is the cow with a crumpled horn that tossed the dog that worried the cat that killed the rat that ate the malt that lay in the house that Jack built. This is the maiden all forlorn that milked the cow with a crumpled horn that tossed the dog that worried the cat that killed the rat that ate the malt that lay in the house that Jack built. This is the man all tattered and torn that kissed the maiden all forlorn that milked the cow with a crumpled horn that tossed the dog that worried the cat that killed the rat that ate the malt that lay in the house that Jack built. This is the priest all shaven and shorn that married the man all tattered and torn that kissed the maiden all forlorn that milked the cow with a crumpled horn that tossed the dog that worried the cat that killed the rat that ate the malt that lay in the house that Jack built. This is the cock that crowed in the morn that waked the priest all shaven and shorn that married the man all tattered and torn that kissed the maiden all forlorn that milked the cow with a crumpled horn that tossed the dog that worried the cat that killed the rat that ate malt that lay in the house that Jack built. This is the farmer sowing his corn that kept the cock that crowed in the morn that waked the priest all shaven and shorn that married the man all tattered and torn that kissed the maid all forlorn that milked the cow with a crumpled horn that tossed the dog that worried the cat that killed the rat that ate the malt that lay in the house that Jack built. The Garden Year. January brings the snow, makes our feet and fingers glow. February brings the rain, thaws the frozen lake again. March brings breezes loud and shrill to stir the dancing daffodil. April brings the primrose sweet, scatters daisies at our feet. May brings flocks of pretty lambs skipping by their fleecy dams. June brings tulips, lilies, roses, fills the children's hands with posies. Hot July brings cooling showers, apricots and gillyflowers. August brings the sheaves of corn, then the harvest home is born. Warm September brings the fruit, sportsmen then begin to shoot. Fresh October brings the pheasant, then to gather nuts is pleasant. Dull November brings the blast, then the leaves are whirling fast. Chill December brings the sleet, blazing fire, and all sorts of treats. The Little Turtle. There was a little turtle, he lived in a box. He swam in a puddle, and he climbed on the rocks. He snapped at a mosquito, he snapped at a flea. He snapped at a minnow, and he snapped at me. He caught the mosquito, he caught the flea. He caught the minnow, but he didn't catch me. The Monkeys and the Crocodile. 5 little monkeys swinging from a tree, teasing Uncle Crocodile, merry as can be. Swinging high, swinging low, swinging left, swinging right. Dear Uncle Crocodile, come and take a bite. 5 little monkeys swinging in the air, heads up, tails up, little do they care. Swinging up, swinging down, swinging far and near. Poor Uncle Crocodile, aren't you hungry, dear? 4 little monkeys sitting in a tree, heads down, tails down, dreary as can be, weeping loud, weeping low, crying to each other, wicked Uncle Crocodile, to gobble up our brother. The Dog and the Bone. It so happened that a dog had a fine bone and was carrying it home to chew on in peace. On his way, he had to go across a plank over a stream. As he walked across the plank, he looked down, and he saw his reflection in the water. Thinking it was another dog with another bone, he made up his mind to have that bone too. But when he snapped at his reflection, his own bone fell into the water and was lost forever. The greedy often lose what they have. The Hare and the Tortoise. The hare was once boasting of his speed before the other animals. "I have never yet been beaten," he said. "When I put forth my full speed, I can run faster than any of you. I challenge anyone here to race with me." The tortoise said quietly, "I accept your challenge." "That is a good joke," said the hare. "I could dance around you all the way." "Keep your boasting till you've won," answered the tortoise. "Shall we race?" So a course was fixed, and a start was made. The hare darted out of sight at once. Soon, knowing that he was far ahead, he stopped to have a nap. Meanwhile, the tortoise plodded along, slowly and steadily. When the hare awoke from his nap, he saw the tortoise nearly at the finish line. The hare leaped up and ran as fast as he could, but he was not in time. The tortoise won the race. The Lion and the Mouse. Once when a lion was asleep, a little mouse began running up and down upon him. This soon wakened the lion. Angry at being disturbed, the lion placed his huge paw on the little mouse and opened his big jaws to swallow him. "Pardon, O king," cried the little mouse. "If you will let me go, I shall never forget your kindness. Who knows but what maybe I will be able some day to do a good turn for you." The lion was so amused at the idea of the mouse being able to help him that he lifted up his paw and let him go. Some time later, the little mouse heard the lion roaring angrily. When he went to see what the trouble was, he found the lion caught in a hunter's net. Remembering his promise, the little mouse set to work, nibbling at the ropes with his sharp teeth, and before long, the lion was able to crawl out of the net. After my bath, I try to wipe myself till I'm dry. Hands to wipe, and fingers and toes, and 2 wet legs, and a shiny nose. Just think how much less time I'd take if I were a dog and could shake. My dog's so furry, I've not seen his face for years and years. His eyes are blurred out of sight. I only guess his ears. When people ask me for his breed, I do not know or care. He has the beauty of them all hidden beneath his hair. The dogs I know have many shapes, for some are big and tall, and some are long, and some are thin, and some are fat and small, and some are little bits of fluff and have no shape at all. The Shoemaker and the Elves. There was once a shoemaker who worked very hard but was also very poor. At last he had just enough leather to make one pair of shoes. He cut out the shoes in the evening so he could set to work on them the next morning. Then he went to bed, and leaving all his cares to heaven, fell asleep. In the morning, when he went down to work, he found the pairs of shoes made and finished, and standing on his table. He was very much astonished and didn't know what to think. After a moment, the poor man took the shoes in his hand to look at them more closely. They were beautifully made. Every stitch was just in the right place, just if they had come from the hand of a master workman. Soon after, a buyer came in. The shoes fit him very well, and so he gave more than the usual price for them. Now the shoemaker had enough money to buy leather for 2 pairs of shoes. He cut out the shoes at night, intending to set to work on them the next morning. But that was not to be. When he got up in the morning, the 2 pairs of shoes were already finished. A customer had paid him so much money for these shoes that he was able to buy leather enough for 4 new pairs. Early the next morning he found the 4 pairs finished, and so it always happened. Whatever he cut out in the evening was worked up by the morning. He was soon making a good living, and in the end became very well-to-do. One night, not long before, a day in December, when the shoemaker had finished cutting out his shoes, and before he went to bed, he said to his wife, "How would it be if we were to sit up tonight and see who it is that makes the shoes?" His wife agreed and left a light burning. They both hid behind a curtain in the corner of the room and watched to see what would happen. As soon as it was midnight, 2 naked little elves came in and seated themselves at the shoemaker's table. They began to stitch, to pierce, to hammer so cleverly and quickly with their little fingers that the shoemaker's eyes could scarcely follow them. They did not stop until everything was finished and ready on the table. Then they jumped up and disappeared as quickly as they had come. The next morning the shoemaker's wife said to her husband, "Those little men have made us rich. We ought to show our thanks. With all their running about and having nothing to cover them, they must be very cold. I'll tell you what, I'll make them little shirts, coats, waistcoats, and breeches for them, and knit them a pair of stockings, and you shall make each of them a pair of shoes." The thought pleased the good man very much. One night, when everything was finished, instead of the cut-out work, they laid the gifts on the table. Then they hid themselves so they could see what the elves would do. When midnight came, the elves rushed in and ready to set to work. But when they found the neat little garments instead of the cut-out leather, they stood a moment in surprise. Then they showed the greatest delight. Swiftly they took up the clothes and slipped them on, singing, "What spruce and dandy boys are we! No longer cobblers will we be." Then they hopped and skipped and leaped over chairs and benches. At last they danced out the door into the night. The shoemaker never saw them again, but from that time on, everything went well with the shoemaker as long as he lived.
The Road Not Taken. 2 roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both and be one traveler. Long I stood and looked down one as far as I could to where it bent in the undergrowth. Then took the other, as just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim because it was grassy and wanted wear. Though as for that, the passing there had worn them really about the same. And both that morning equally lay in leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day. Yet, knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh somewhere ages and ages hence. 2 roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference.